Thank you very much for joining us on the Modern Job Search Checklist. My name is Mark, and across from me is Damien, and we're both here every single Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern to help you with your job search dilemmas. If you're in the chat, if you're around your computer, you want to kind of play along with us, go in the chat, let us know, say hi. We're trying to give you the best advice possible. Today, we're talking about job search and how to partner up, or reasons why you should partner up, or just reasons why you shouldn't do it alone, because it shouldn't be just a uh, something that you do by yourself. Only tennis players get to do that, or maybe bowlers and maybe a few others. But other than that, you should be making it a team sport. And people, it's been shown that people who the studies that have been done, that people have other people to be accountable with and job search with, that accelerates and exponentially um, gratifies their timeline as far as getting a job. So feel free to comment, tell us your experiences, help other people who are in the chat as well, and hopefully you'll participate with us. And we're going to, and first I should let Damien speak. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good
Ready
deal.
to go.
Good deal. He is ready to go, and I'm very glad of that. Um, and again, that's Damien Birkel. You can catch him at jobsearching.org. His nonprofit is a nationally recognized nonprofit to help job seekers find jobs. More than 10,000 people have been successful through this program and has made a major deal in their lives. Let's talk. There's been a lot written about job clubs. In fact, I think even LinkedIn has chimed in recently about the benefits of job clubs. But I know not everybody gets a chance to read that newsletter, and people who are outside of LinkedIn may not have even logged into their account to get into it. But we'll get into it right now as we talk about how beneficial job clubs are. And really, since you are I proclaim you being the job club king, with the professionals in transition and having done that for 30 years now. Are you guys having you guys had a 30-year reunion, right? For professional transition?
Mhm. We did it right at our Christmas party that we took a chance on and did in person, and the
Mhm.
number of people came back. I was blown out of the water, if you want to know the truth.
Yeah, people couldn't wait to get with other people, and I can understand that. But in this day and age, I would think a resource like job clubs would be even more useful now than they ever have been.
I agree. Uh, for me, and that's the whole reason why there's professionals in transition. I was so alone. I was in a new city. I was 500 miles from home. I had only been active in my church community and really didn't know anybody in the business community. And as I mentioned, I tried to find support groups even within driving distance. And when I called
Hmm.
Chamber of Commerce's and what have you, they just laughed. My point being is you can receive tangible benefits by attending in person. Not
Hmm.
only do you get information, not only do you get out of your house and out of isolation, but the people that you meet, the people that present to you each week is very, very important. And the dynamics of being in person are, if you're in person, a person can reach out and shake your hand and say, I don't know what it's like for you, but I can tell you what it was like for me when I was out of work. And why don't we talk about a strategy for you that we can customize to meet your needs? Now,
Hmm.
there are thousands of job clubs online,
Hmm.
but it takes a little extra effort and courage, by the way, to find a job club or support group that you actively be involved in. And what I said last night to two new people, that this was extremely brave of you to step out of your
Hmm.
comfort zone and come into a room of strangers and talk about your job search. Well, by the end of the night, uh, both had paired off with board members from professionals in transition for
Hmm.
one-on-one help. So the bottom line is there's lots of good stuff online, but there is nothing better than coming together, being in person, and hopefully partnering up with someone who's either been through and has graduated, or with another person in the group that is going through the process at the same time you are.
Yeah, that is, I agree, and I agree. Even though I think as well for a lot of people that being that there's so many job clubs that are actually online or that actually are public, they have a choice now of joining the ones where they can get the most help. Because you know, and I know that job clubs aren't all created equal, and people running them sometimes are doing it more for the community and the group's think tank than they are as a professional who might have a certification in coaching like yourself, uh, or somebody who's really knowledgeable and has a lot of experience are able to help people. There's some dynamics of doing it online, I think, though, that we really can't be ignored. And I think some people need to reshape the way they think about job clubs online, because to a certain degree, that might be the only option that's available. If it is, then people will have to find a way to use that. And again, it takes a little bit, like you said, it takes a little bit of courage and maybe a little bit audacity to go ahead and reach out to people and say, I want to participate in this club. A lot of people will rather turn off the video camera and just listen to the audio rather than to be seen and to be asked questions. So, you know, in most cases, that's okay too. I run one, as you know, and that you participated in every summer, which starts in April, end of April. But I keep it private to my email list and people who are in my church, and for reasons to keep the safety and sometimes even the anonymity, that really helps. So I think if you're looking for something like that, there are options like that too. And sometimes there are a way to access it, but you have to kind of ask the person who facilitates. Like, if you want to know how to join mine, you like the anonymity, or anonymity. I
Got
may
it.
get that word right at some point, but you know, if you want to do it incognito, then you can feel free to talk to me. You could be a part of it. We do it on Saturday mornings. We start that April 28th, but you gotta ask me how to get to be a part of it because it is a private one. But I think the idea is to have that interaction, and people are pretty, how should I say it? They're prescriptive in the way they use it. In other words, people don't just casually come and just enjoy the banter. They come because they have specific needs, and or they have specific questions to ask. Once they're done with their questions and their dilemmas are solved, it's likely that they may not participate anymore,
Yep.
which, you know, especially holds true for mine. People are transient. Once they've gotten what they need, they're not coming back until they need that information again. So, and that's okay because it's not really meant to be a social club, though there are some groups that you could join that the socialization is phenomenal. And of course, that takes more resources than I'm able to provide. But I think that people can get that if they want it. They can look around and find it. One is a very big one online and LinkedIn. And shout out to my friends Trevor Houston, Foster Williams, and Mark Elders, who do the Who You Know Club, which is you could find through LinkedIn and YouTube and some of the other channels. But theirs is a very socialized, high production. Uh, you know, but job club. But having said that, they do a lot of things that, you know, they you know, it's a little bit of monetary involved, but not for the participants though. I believe the participants, especially if they have the live streaming show, is for free. So you can be involved in that as well. So, there's a lot of different varieties, but I think people really underestimate how useful or have yet to venture out to find out how useful that could be for their job search.
Mhm. And I absolutely agree. That is a great group, and
Mhm.
there are many groups across America and elsewhere.
Right?
Please don't um, assume that you only need to go to one in-person event club a week. Uh, with COVID, um, and it was before this also, but with the technological leap that was taken, it's seamless, and you can
Hmm.
attend any job in the world, job support group anywhere in the world, and that's fine. And I
Hmm.
absolutely encourage it. But there is something to be said about the in-personness of
Hmm.
and immediacy of a job club where you go to physically. And I think that ideally now job searchers have uh, an ideal environment where not only can they choose anywhere in the world to attend online, but also
Hmm.
have the opportunity in many cases to be able to also go in person because the dynamics are so different. And Mark, I continue to learn every week. I
Hmm.
told you that my technological skills are not the greatest in the world by any means,
Hmm.
but what I have learned since we have gone back in person is you can have the best information online, and that's fine. But when you have it in person and it's one on one or one on small, sometimes the conversation in an in person event shifts to mirror the needs of the participants. These are the first time people have walked through the door, but yet by being able to kind of flex and meet their needs, uh, they
Hmm.
came in heads down, feeling ashamed, reluctant to talk. But after the end of the meeting, which actually went on for over 3 hours in person, they
Hmm.
walked out, they were excited, they were smiling, they had next steps, and were looking forward to coming back next week because both of them said that this energized me in a way that attending an event online just can't because you have that warm personal touch. So,
Yeah.
bottom line is do both.
Yeah, and Lord knows I know what it's like to do it live, as we used to do it live for mine when it was more localized. That people coming in really, when they touch live people who are going through the same thing, it's an entirely different dynamic in a lot of ways. Although um, the feedback that I've gotten from, especially from Generation Zers, who listen to and watch my content and read my content, is that they're more apt to set people who they meet and talk to online as if they were in person. Now, I'm not saying that it takes any special gift or anything, and I don't think there's any wrong to feel one way or another. I think people are just wired entirely different, and I think the generations are wired entirely different. And I like the informal. I mean, not yeah, it's kind of informal, not so structured idea of being physically with people because for many years if you've sat in front of people, done workshops, and done things like that, having people right in front of you, it forces you, it brings out a different side of you. And more likely, your personality is likely to come out and expand more among people and touch more people in a sense because you can see them smile, you can see the body language, you can respond to the body language, you can respond to the silence, even. We're getting some kind of feedback of somewhere, but. Yeah, yeah. I think that there's a very powerful connection that you make in person than you make anywhere else. At the same time, I think of a group member, and I think I shared this a few weeks ago, how my program runs through the summer through my email list, of course, like I said. And one person actually came to mine when mine was done. They went to Hannah Morgan's.
Ah,
who,
okay.
they went to Hannah Morgan's as well and did both and continued with Hannah, I believe, and found a job, which was great. But she said that doesn't diminish at all the benefits that she got attending mine. She needed a little bit longer touch. And having said that, there's nothing wrong with being a part of two clubs, even if you may do both as you suggested, or there might be two or three groups where you interacted. One of the guys from Who You Know, Foster Williams, actually, I asked him in a private conversation that we had on the phone. We were talking. It's like, so you talk about job clubs like you participate in a couple. He says, I have about 40. Yeah, 40, 40. It's like, how do you do 40? He says, I just do it. I just travel around and, I pick up, I say, okay, so you had the financial means to travel around and be a part of the, and what, and probably, no telling, there might be some other things that might be involved. I don't know if he still does that. In fact, I've got to ask him because he would be a great guest to come on the show. But all in all, yeah, he does it around the country. A lot of the states he named were a lot of southern states. Of course, he's from Texas. But having said that, some people are just the energy is wonderful when you're live, and I kind of miss that part of it, especially when you have a bunch of people and people who are engaged in it. And that's probably the other portion too, is that you don't get anything out of it, or you get little out of it if you're not engaged in it. In other words, asking questions, talking about and sharing about what your journey has been like, some of your hardships, and maybe even offering some value to other people to answering their questions and providing resources that you may have that nobody else has.
Hmm. Absolutely. And you mentioned the energy that you feel when you're a participant in a job club. You get a surge of adrenaline if you're in
Hmm.
it, and if you're participating, and if you're providing feedback in a
Hmm.
non-judgmental atmosphere, because that's very important. Anonymity is very important, but also both those that are doing the presenting and those who are there for the receiving,
Hmm.
just taking people where they are is
Yes,
something that in most cases just doesn't happen.
right.
And not everyone can afford great folks like we work with, and
Hmm.
having the opportunity to get additional perspective um, is terrific. And like you, Mark, um, those that come into our group are transient. It's always changing. I think what the
Hmm.
difference is that there's a small cadre of extremely loyal alumni that
Yeah.
continue to care and support professionals in transition.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that happens with my job lab as well. Probably not much as you've experienced through the professionals in transition, because you have others that become board members and offer their experiences in keeping the organization as widely recognized that they've had. That you've had throughout the years, which is amazing to me, especially for the thousands that you've helped. But I think it's important that people do take advantage of those opportunities, like the ones we provide when we do the live streams. I do the Wednesday show. I come and do the Friday show. This is a kind of a de facto job club in a sense, and people can actually do it in the chat. But if you really want to experience something, and those of you watching, if you've never seen Andrew Seaman do his live show, which is streamed on LinkedIn, that is like a job club experience online. In the sense, it's for just a half hour, but the people are interacting. They're asking questions of each other. Sometimes there's recruiters and career coaches who are connecting with other people and helping answering their questions. I mean, it's more than just hearing like how we talk and us talk, and of course their platform is a whole lot largely seen than ours. But having said that, though, any of those platforms, anything, and like the Who You Know show, they've built it a lot, and they spent the last 4 years plus building something that's interactive, people engage, and people are having fun. We want to say hi to Cynthia Olumacho, or Oluomacho. I hope I pronounced it right second time. But thank you. Watching from Nigeria. So this is an instance where we see many times people come from all over, as far as Africa, um, to perhaps, I haven't seen anybody from Antarctica come to our show, but I think people can come that far. But we've had people come from a lot of different companies, and a lot of our guests have come. Sonel Bal has come from Hungary. We've had participants and guests from Canada who also have been a part of our show. And, we think it's really important that people have a very broad perspective. So painting uh, job advice in a very narrow stream is kind of irresponsible in a sense, because everybody's different. Canada has their perspective, and Nigeria, I'm sure they had their perspective. We're trying to kind of come in and combine everybody as much as we possibly can for who we know out there. So, welcome, Cynthia. We thank you for coming to the show. Of course, we're here every week for you. So, uh, let's talk a little bit more and dig into, of course, this ends up being about networking ultimately. But I think one of the things that people still miss is the benefits of informative, or it's not informative interviews, and though it is informational interviews. Or even if you want to talk about having business conversations, is something that's a little bit better, that Hannah Morgan actually has coined. And some people call them informational meetings, which, it doesn't matter what you may call them. But if for those who are just watching, you may have heard the term for the first time, it's kind of is where the person that's looking for a job becomes the interviewer and begins to get information from somebody who may be in an industry that they're interested in.
Mhm.
So, so therefore, they are the interviewee, and they're basically asking questions that will serve the person that's asking about their career, about the industry you want to get in. Maybe it might be some tools, resources, mindset information they can get so they can use for their job search. So that's kind of the basics of it. And the whole idea again is to get information. It's not particularly ask for a job or to ask them personal questions in that sense. They're more, again, information to help give you ammo or tools to help you go forth and make your job search more productive. And in some cases, you might get referrals. Some cases, you might, rare where that person might be able to offer you a job based on that. But all in all, to say that these are about the information you can get from interviews. So, in your experience, I know that you personally have used informational interviews to help you get jobs in the past. So, how does that manifest itself in your experience?
uh, Establishing an in-person network plus your LinkedIn network gives you access to people in your area. I don't know about yours, but if you look at my LinkedIn and those that are in it, they're all over the place and they can provide great information. But you don't have that opportunity to go one-on-one with them. Now, I know with COVID, people are still adjusting and have been somewhat reluctant to receive those who want to have informational interviews with them, but I do it all the time. I mean, the way that I got around it is I sent an invitation to someone I knew. We used to have lunch, but of course that all ended. And I said, why don't we Zoom for lunch? You bring your lunch, I'll bring my lunch, and we can get caught up. And this particular person is a walking encyclopedia of connections within the region. And if you have the opportunity to interface with Bob, you're going to naturally get referrals just out of the conversation. But even more important is if you do it in person or you do it on Zoom, just like you said, Mark, you become the interviewer, but you also learn how to establish rapport. Establishing rapport during your job search, whether it's online or in person or with an employer, is critical because of the fact that people will get to know you and know your talents. And the beauty of speaking to people and saying, I don't expect you to have a job. I don't expect your company to have a job. I don't expect you to ever have a job for me. I just want to get the opportunity to get a chance to know you a little bit better. And OPS, Mark is the person who said that I should talk to you. That opens vistas of information that you can harvest. And at the very end of the interview, which is 20 minutes, and at 19 minutes, you stand up and say, I said we were only going to have a 20-minute meeting, and I want to honor my commitment to you, and stand up and get ready to shake their hands. 9 times out of 10, what do you think happens, Mark? They tell you to sit down. I had planned an hour to meet with you, not 20 minutes. But the end and most critical question that you can ask after any interview, online or in person, is who else should I be talking to? And once they reveal who those people are, then you might say, would you mind if I contact them and use your name? And again, 9 times out of 10, they say yes. Now, does this work with every referral? No. But by doing this on a consistent basis, you're filling in the gaps of an isolated job search by actually being out there and working it, for lack of a better term. You're working your community or you're working your profession so that you begin to have ripple effects from the relationships that you consciously develop specifically because you were referred to this person by you or me or somebody else.
I was muted, drinking water and all that kind of stuff,
Sorry about
doing
that.
tech stuff, doing tech stuff. No, that was me. But I think one of the things that you said, and I think is very important, the dynamics is very important, and people should be mannerable when they do these informational interviews, especially in person. But taking the online approach, I think most people that I know who've done it, they've done it online because of the, of course, of the proximity and restrictions that were placed on us. But I think one of the things that I want to point out is that Lee Hecht and Harrison is a global career management company. They actually did a survey, and they found that people who did at least 25 informational interviews, they were able to get at least one job offer. And I find that very interesting. And it wasn't very specific as far as did the person take back information and start applying it. And because they were applying so much really good information that they got the job offer, or that they actually met somebody that introduced them, or maybe that was a person that actually made a job offer who they interview. And it could be any of them, and that is still a win, right? You have the idea that you've been talking to so many people about interviews, and I would ask people questions. What would you rather do? Apply to 100 jobs and hear nothing, or talk to 25 people and get at least one offer, or at least get an interview out of it? And no telling, they might have had, it didn't say that they had several interviews or one interview that led to that job offer. My money's on that they had several interviews throughout the process, and when they were able to land a job offer. All that to be said, that it is very well documented that they are. There's a college that actually did a survey, and they had their students did 12 informational interviews, and they said they always had somebody who did at least 12 come back and have a job offer from that. So really, it depends on how, I guess, if you want to play, Russian roulette in the sense of applying to jobs and never hearing back, um, that's one thing. And people do have that choice. And I'm not going to tell you that is wrong. I'm
Mhm.
just going to say that those 25 interviews, informational interviews that you had, the other 24 people are now part of your network. And to take upon that, the other 24 people could also serve you down the line, especially if you're engaging with them. And there's also 24 plus pieces of information or more that you had now that you never had before. So you know that if something and it comes up in the next couple of years where you need to job search again, you could go back and maybe half of those people will still give you a chance to meet with them, or for the fact that you have familiarity with them now, that you can go ask a little bit more direct question because you have that familiarity with them, and that you can then maybe cut some of that time even shorter. But having said that, still informational interviews you might want to consider to continue it even if you have a job that's still functional, you're interested in, and you're still engaged with, because of the amount of information that you're getting. um, it doesn't have to be always, and I don't recommend ever said, hey, can I do an informational interview with you? No, don't say that. That that sounds is so unauthentic, if I can use that word. There's that word again. But I think people, you get the point that, hey, you have 10, 15 minutes. I like the 10 to 15 minute frame, because 10 to 15 minutes, 10 minutes is not even a break time. People don't have to schedule 10 minutes. It's, yeah, I got 10 minutes for my before my next call. Let's talk. I think it just frames it a little bit easier, though, folks, there's no rules for you to do it. This is just another way to do it. But I think, that's how you get people on your team, is to ask them questions, ask them what their experiences are, and ask them, can you point me in some kind of direction, or point me to a person, or introduce me? And you'd be surprised at those results.
Absolutely. Agree with everything that you said. You said it really, really well. I have two additional thoughts. When you get to the point in your informational interview, regardless of how long it is, once you ask the who else should I be talking to, if
Mhm.
they reveal those people to you, they've just bought into you and your
Yes,
job campaign.
great
And
point.
thank you. And if you go out and continue to meet with the people as you go through, right? Because every time you're there, you say, who else should I be talking to? You're almost doing a direct line of communication from one person to the other person to the other person, because you're following their referrals.
Hmm.
And here's another interesting way to use this. Um, let's say you want a job in a hospital. You go
Hmm.
around and you talk to the president of Hospital A. when you're with hospital B and the person makes a point, you can say, you know what? I was talking to so and so, name of president of hospital, and she said the same thing. And where I'm going with this is if you play within a certain industry and you're making these connections,
Right.
name dropping the other people that you have interviewed with only strengthens your net. It strengthens your relationship, and it also increases the likelihood that a job will come your way in one form or another, because as you are making the rounds, it's a very concentrated strategy of making the rounds
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with those people. And basically, what you do is you end up creating this aura effect. The
Right.
the result being, well, he called me and I talked to him and I talked to him and she talked to him. All these people have bought into you personally and where you're going next. And you can build momentum that you could not build any other way. In one of the books that I wrote, Chapter Checklist, I did some research, and you can
Mm-hmm.
actually track the impact of informational interviews because, and I'll do this very quickly, when you're on the internet, it's hit or miss, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you hit, a lot of times you miss. If you
Yeah.
are doing a stable internet job search and then begin to network, your job searching ability and expertise goes like this in person or on Zoom while your uh, regular uh, job search that everybody else is doing. And so the net effect is, at least from what I have noticed, that
Mm-hmm.
it shortens your job search because you have opened yourself up to sorts of opportunities
Yeah.
online and in person.
Yep. Yep. All that is just fantastic. I want to build on what you said because I coined a term in an article 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, um, where, like you said, a person is invested when they're giving you their resources. And especially, they said, hey, call me if you can't get in touch with someone, or call me and let me know how something went. They are invested now because they're willing to spend a little extra time to make sure that you had the success with the resources they're probably interested in thinking, boy, I like to also know if that person is still in the same place doing the same thing because I hadn't talked to them in a while, which is very cool to do. But I think also if they're interested in how things went with you, they're invested in that now. So can you imagine if you did 25 and that there's even 5 people who are interested in you like that? What are the chances of them redirecting you or saying, that I've got some other resources for you? You got 5 people who are on your team. And I'm not saying, that everybody that you talk to is going to be invested in. There'll be some who are just doing you a favor because they like you and they had this set time and they won't be able to spend any more time. And there may be some people who don't like the process of spending that time, which is okay. Sometimes you can get an idea who may not by those first few that you ask. But I call it constructive direction or even constructive redirection. Constructive direction meaning that after they giving you advice, they want to see the quality of your response. They say, hey, get back with me in a couple of weeks and let me know how things are going. If you got a job or if you're still running out, they're invested into that, so they're really help even redirecting you to say, well, if this isn't working, then this will work. So therefore they're taking that constructiveness and redirecting you to another resource that may help. If you get that done a few times out of the 25 people, then you really got something going on. So for every, and I'm just using 25 people as a barrier. If you're a college student, I think 25 is a perfect number. for you to do during the year, or maybe in that first semester from September to December, or even now, from now until the end of the year, where you can go to your college alumni uh, or college career services and say, hey, could you give me some numbers of people who graduated with my major who are working in those industries? They are almost if they can't give that to you, or at least be able to provide some other resources like that, then don't ever go back to that career. So I'm serious, and I
Oh,
know that I may even get that, but that's what they're there for. And some of them are dying for to have people come in, because very often they're sitting around waiting for students to come in. They're not going to be proactive about it, but a lot of them, they should be able to provide that service. If they can't, maybe they could generate an event or a virtual event where you could talk to a whole bunch of them at one time, and maybe you could personally connect with them. I think even in that case, you might be able to add 10 or more people to your LinkedIn list that you can keep engaged in some kind of way. All of that to give you, because really, the more people you have, the more people will increase your chances of you making it, because that's how wide the resources are going to be for you and to your job search. Believe me, again, you want that scenario as opposed to not hearing from 100 jobs that you applied to online.
absolutely agreed. And here is a little way to bridge your various connections. What I always did
Hmm.
is, so I have a great meeting with Mark, and Mark said, I
Hmm.
need to talk to Larry, Curly, and Mo. And so
Hmm.
I would use the very same type of communication, email, letter, or whatever, and pick it up and write letters or emails to Larry, Curly, and Mo, and basically
Hmm.
say something like, I had a great conversation today with Mark.
Hmm.
Please understand that do not expect you to know or have a job for me. Mark thought it would be terrific if the two of us could get together, and here are the only 5 questions that I'm going to ask. Carbon
Yeah.
copy, Mark. And so your
Yeah.
bridge is created because Mark is being kept into the mix all the way through. And if I'm giving out my personal connections where I have worked very hard to establish relationships with, I'm going to make sure that I am not abusing the connection that you gave me or misusing that 10 minutes or 15 minutes by asking the wrong kind of questions.
Hmm.
Two more things.
Yeah.
I know I did with you, but two more things. Um,
Sure.
when you've been out of work, you're going to make some really good connections with people who really care about you.
Hmm.
Always keep in touch with them. To this very day, I am in touch with the person in my network who found a job for me at Higbee's department store where the Christmas Story was filmed in 1987. So I don't know how many years that is. It's over 30 that I have kept in touch with him. The other
Hmm.
thing is, once you go through the learning cycle of how to do an effective informational interview, there's two things. One, as I mentioned, you get the opportunity to establish rapport with this person because you go beyond just a piece of paper. They know what you look like, they know who
Right.
you know. And then the final thing is, I do informational interviewing whether I'm at work or not. And perhaps the most spectacular one is, I saw an article in a business journal, magazine, North Carolina magazine. This
Hmm.
person was on the front cover, and it was at our local NBC affiliate, and he was the president.
Hmm.
And in the article, he talked about how they were taking the entire paradigm and shifting it from just online news to a being able to broadcast on all sorts of different channels, and in fact had made a commitment to take the channel digital. And so I wrote him a quick note and I said, I saw this. Here's a copy of it. I was very impressed. I would love to learn how you have made the conversion from plain old news to digital media.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
long and the short of it is, all I wanted was information. I was just curious about
Right.
it. And ultimately, I was the person, I've been employed. He wanted to know, what do you want to do? Where do you want to be in a year? And I looked him in the eye and I said, I want to learn how to do live television effectively. I've done it
Hmm.
before. I've been on national live shows, but I really want to learn the mechanics, the tools, and how it's done. He said, well, that's a very good goal. We talked a little bit more, shook hands, off I went. A month later, the phone rings. It is the director of news saying, we're getting ready to expand the new news, and we were wondering if you would like to come on weekly to provide reemployment information. Now, this news director did not all of a sudden think of Damien. The news director thought of Damien because the president of the company said, hey, talk to this guy. He's really good. He's done work for us before. What do you think? And that launched me into a 3-year career of having a television segment on the new news.
Hmm.
And my point is, here's the bottom line. The bottom line is, if you ask, you will receive. And although I did not go in to see Hank Reed to ask about a television spot, which to me I thought was impossible, I went in for straight information. And I
Hmm.
got straight information plus. And so my point is when you have these interviews, be prepared. Know what you're going to ask. Also be prepared about the person who referred you in, because
Hmm.
9 times out of 10, after you say who I am, the person's going to say, well, how is Mark doing? I haven't talked to him in a while. And then bring them up to date. Now, if it's a 10-minute interview, that probably is 5 minutes right there.
Yeah.
Uh, and with the 5 minutes left, realize that you have one good question to ask, and make sure that you ask it and that it is an igniter question, a question that
Hmm.
you ask somebody who will lit up and share information for you simply because you asked. Because if you don't ask, you don't get.
Let's ride that pony a little bit more because I love that last portion. That's very important because I think one, before I forget, you should also send a thank you card to the person that you had an interview with to thank them for their time. They took 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even maybe even a Starbucks card, which I've done, saying, hey, and send them electronically. I could do it right from my Starbucks app and boom, they would have it and they can get anything they want from it. So having said that, though, definitely wrote an article that I actually am still working on it in a way uh, about informational interviews for upcoming article that I'm due for uh, that uh, talks about the types of questions you could ask. And for some reason, I went into this mode that it just made sense at the time that there are two types of questions you can ask in an informational interview that could be effective, but one might be a little bit more effective than the other depending upon the time that you have. One is called I call a reflective question. That is, you're asking about someone's personal career and how they got to where they are. The other one is an investigative question, which is much more direct, asking them, what can you do directly right now that you could take and apply as soon as you stop talking to that person? So that way, you're looking for more direct information, and probably a better example of that. Let's A reflective question would be, how did you get into the industry, and how did you land a job that led you to do what you're doing today? So that person thinking about their own personal history. So they're reflecting, thinking back how they got there. But if you ask an investigative question like, what are the key skills to thrive in this industry? and what skills are needed the most. Then you reframe the question and you ask it in a way that gives you resources or the ammo or anything else. There's a lot of examples that you go through, but really one again reflective is asking them how did they get on their journey, so they're thinking back in their own personal library to see what answer would be appropriate for you, as opposed to asking investigative is that how can I get that information and apply it right now? And then therefore you're getting that information right then. You have a to-do list that you're creating that I'm going to do these things. By asking those two types of questions, you're able to engage. Sometimes in 10, 15 minutes, you might be able to just ask 2 or 3 questions. So you've got to be on your game enough to figure out, okay, they gave me a whole lot to work with. And really, you don't want to drain the swamp, so to speak, and trying to ask them everything you possibly can, unless they give you permission. As you say, start to wind up the time and let them decide, say, I've got a few more minutes and I love this. Because for them, they feel like they're giving back to the community, or they're giving to the community of the industry, so to speak. So for them, it's valuable in both ways. And I know that I have people come to me today, people who will come into the career profession. They're asking me, how did I get into what I do? I say, I don't know. I landed this by accident. But one of the things I do say, if you listen to some podcasts I said I kind of was abnormally born in this profession. Let me tell you why. And that leads on to having an engaged discussion most of the time. But I think that's where people, it can't be boring. Let's just say that, right? Informational interview that person can't be bored. So you've got to kind of feel them out, read the body language here in person, or read their answer if they're virtual, and being able to get them to express some kind of interest. Even if they're given great resources, you still want them to be interested. And I'm not saying, that you're able to win everybody over, but because of the way you treat them with such dignity and respect, you have more of a chance to win them over.
Absolutely right. And what you are doing, and I can't stress this enough, is you're learning how to build rapport with a stranger.
Yeah.
And if you build that level of rapport, you flatter the person when you say, how did you get started? Or
Hmm.
how has the industry changed across your career? Or what do you like about your job? And what do you not like about your job and why?
Right.
And by flattering this person, they will drop their defensiveness, which these days is pretty high, and
Hmm.
for just a second, be shocked that you would take the time and trouble to go see them for what for them is a simple answer that just rolls off their tongue. Or it may even be a question that they've never been asked or not in a long time. Hence, what you were saying, Mark, about reflective questions. But in the
Hmm.
very end, if they have bought into you, they will refer you. And then now, just like you said, Mark, that you have a responsibility to not only thank them, but thank the three
Hmm.
people that you met with, carbon copy to this person so they know that you followed through.
Hmm.
And now that you've made these connections, you must feed and nourish the relationship, whether it is job related or not. Because if you do this right and you hit off with a relatively deep level, you will have a friend, a person, however you want to say it, that you'll be able to
Hmm.
call for help throughout
Yeah.
your career.
Yeah.
But you cannot squander that very short amount of time that you have. It has to be planned. It comes with practice. And the more you do it, quite honestly, the better you get.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was a very good exhaustive in how to do informational interviews, even though our intent was to help people gather people on their job search team so they don't feel like they're doing it alone. Other people who can ask you even as simple as how's it going and is there anywhere else I can help, let me know. Those two questions really do make your day and also make you much more engaged. And honestly, you'll be much more efficient in the way that your job search in from that point on. Once you know what to experience and what it feels like to get things done, you'll start doing those things instead of doing some things that don't take a lot of thinking, but yet don't provide a lot of production or time saving value for you.
Mhm.
So anyway, I want to be sure to check back a couple of housekeeping notes. How you like that? Housekeeping notes. A couple of housekeeping notes. The next 2 weeks, we have really good guests. Rona Barnett Pierce is going to be on the show next week. She's a recent LinkedIn voice for Job Search and Career 2022. I booked her before she got that, but all in all, to say is that this is for her to be able to have some time for us is going to be fantastic. So we're going to have a lot of fun with that, and that's next Friday. We're going to be having her, and then Cassie Spencer, who is a co-host of the GPS uh, Career Podcast. So you want to join us because they are practitioners and they've had lots of clients that they've worked with. That's really going to give everybody a firsthand view on how they can get help from career professionals who are doing it and doing it well in the career space. And no telling that can bring them very much closer to their next job. What you got next, Damien?
I have an article that I just found out that is going to be, or I'm going to be quoted in
Uh,
Upjourney, and
uh,
it's talking about how to manage if you're going to be fired or if you're worried about your job or what have you. And
mhm,
then I just completed a podcast the night before. We started at 8:30 p.m. EST,
mm,
but the website is badboss.com.
okay.
And we had a long conversation, and
Hmm.
I talked on a very personal level of what it was like for me to get fired.
Hmm.
And it ended up being a great conversation. It just flew by. And as soon as I get the link to the podcast, I will be sharing. Mark, how about you?
Awesome.
What's up with you?
Um, let's see. I'll have a couple of Lenza articles coming out on Lenza.com. And I've got a couple of podcasts that are coming out. One's an NPR podcast, which is going to be awesome. And
Okay.
then I got a couple of others that are going to be coming up that are very meaningful. There's a lot going on. I've got a lot going on. And I don't want to announce it all because timing is also an issue in announcing. I don't want people to look for something that may not be out for a couple of months. So I'll keep it there. Thank you, Damien, as always, coming on and giving the people what they want. Um, there's a song by the OJs called "Give the People What They Want." So yeah, there you go. In the meantime, you've been listening to the Modern Job Search Checklist. We're here every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. We'd love to have you. Bring your friends next time. Maybe they'll need it as much as you do. Or if you just want to come and listen, that's fine too. We love it here. We've been doing this since October of 2020. So we are embarking on a very long journey here. Looks like we're approaching the 2 year mark in doing this, and we have 2 years worth of video. Not all of them are on our YouTube page, but we have quite a few of them. I believe we have close to 50 now that are on the YouTube page. So if you go to the Modern Job Search Checklist, we also stream there. and it's right there when you go to it. So I hope you, if you need it, go get it. In the meantime, we are signing off. Thank you very much. Peace in the Valley of Love. We'll see you next week.